Using computers, we were finally in a position to test thousands of years of philosophical theory about how the mind works. To a lot of people, it seemed like the computer finally offered us a chance to construct a mind using as our model all the philosophical theories we've developed. Bert Dreyfus's genius was recognizing that this was what was going on.
The climate at the time was one of great excitement with regard to the prospect of artificial intelligence.
There were these people in the AI lab, artificial intelligence lab, claiming that they had found the rules and the symbolic representations that would soon enable computers to be intelligent. They were saying, look, we know how the mind works. You philosophers have missed it.
He was going up against very prominent researchers at his own institution who were in the more prominent departments at MIT, the engineering and computer science kinds of departments.
They were saying that we don't have to care about what Dreyfus says. He's just a philosopher.
What programmers were doing was trying to make a computer intelligent by giving it the kind of thoughts that they thought humans had. So you'd make an exhaustive list of, there's a table in the room, the table is brown, the table is hard, the table is this size, and you can see that this could go on for a very, very long time.
And it's got to do a lot with understanding what's relevant. What's relevant right now is that I'm sitting here talking to you, and the lights are relevant, cameras are relevant. If there's any dust on the floor under this chair, it's not. I mean, you just can't take account of all the facts in this room. There's an infinite number of facts about this room.
The systems would get hung up on metaphors or hung up on inferences that were dependent on knowledge of ordinary things in everyday life. Like if you pick up this piece of weed here and drop it, it will fall, right? And when it will fall, it won't make a sound because it's soft. Things like this that everybody knows. How much stuff like that do you know, right? 100 things, 1,000 things, maybe 1,000,000 things, right?
And I think the hope was that once we got enough of those facts into the computer, that the computer would start acting like we do. If Heidegger was right and Bert Dreyfus was right, you couldn't do that.
Bert really thought that the artificial intelligence community was basing their research program on a bad understanding of what it is to be the kinds of beings that we are.
Philosophy had finally discovered that this rationalist, atomistic, rule-following understanding of how the mind works is wrong.
They had the Platonic idea that the kinds of beings that we are rational computing mechanisms. We are logical sort of characterizers of the universe, and they thought that they could therefore replicate all of the things that we do just by writing computer programs, which after all are very logical and very rational and follow rules very, very well.
And moreover, sort of laughing at the philosophy classes where they say, look, you philosophers have been trying to understand perception and action and skill and all that for 2,000 years and you've got nowhere. We already have a very important clue, and in another 8 to 10 years we'll have intelligent computers.
There was a lot of derision of Bert and his work.
They said, Dreyfus doesn't know anything about programming. I have the clue. They're right about programming. How can he be telling us that we can't do this?
In his view, it was sort of the emperor had no clothes. There was no support for this idea at all. So he started trying to show how implausible it is.
Once I was really brave. They said, we've got a car that will drive on the street in traffic from here to there with that, because it has, and with no human driver. And I said, I doubt it. And they said, we're telling you we've got it. And I said, I'm telling you that you haven't got it. You're lying. And I was right. I mean, it was just that reality was on my side. There was this huge effort to suppress this criticism, mainly because there were millions of dollars at stake. DARPA gave the money for the research, defense research, and they were afraid they would stop giving the money. And then when I was at MIT, they were even more afraid because the AI lab got about $1 million a year from DARPA for AI research, and they were afraid that if they ever read my paper, they would take away their money. And in the end, that's sort of what happened.
Ultimately, I think it's fair to say that criticism has won out.
The claim was you could build such and such a machine. And you could test that claim by seeing whether you can build such and such a machine. And it couldn't be done in the 1950s or the 60s, and it hasn't been done even now. Perhaps I can reach to one of the most fundamental aspects about the difference between human beings and machines by adverting to something about each of us with which we are all deeply familiar, and that is that it matters to us what happens in the world. It matters to us what happens to us. It matters to us what happens to our friends. It matters to us the progress of science and philosophy. All of those are desiderata, those are things to build a life on that one can summarize in the phrase, giving a damn. And if you have that phrase, then you can say, in a word, what AI has so far failed to come up with by saying the trouble with computers is that they don't give a damn.
What we are at bottom, much more fundamental than our being thinking subjects, is that we care about something. Something matters to us.